Hey, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. So, in this episode, we're gonna be talking a little bit about how to deck build. Honestly, that's one of my favorite parts about the game. You'll see a lot of deck profiles on the channel, and there'll be some just really interesting deck concepts. They won't always be the most meta defining, but they'll certainly be sound in theory in what the deck's trying to do in the win condition, and kind of like the synergy of the deck. They'll always be sound. They'll always be super solid. Take to a locals, and I won't put it up without testing it. But yeah, so I want to kind of implement another episode of the strategy series and talk to you guys about how to build a deck. A lot of people I know need help with this, and I consider myself to be a decent deck builder, a pretty good deck builder. And it's one of my favorite parts of the game. So before I do get into this, I made a little Google Doc that I am going to put the link to view down in the description. So anytime you want to reference this, you can totally do that. And I also want to shout out Kitchen Table Meta for this deck building article by Richard Zapp. It's really solid. It's one of the steps of deck building which talks about ratios and how to go by theory on ratios. It's really in depth. So I really recommend you guys check this out. The link for this will also be in the description of this video. So without further ado, we'll get into this little Google Doc here, and we'll just go step by step on what you want to look for when you're deck building. So in a chronological order. So I think the first thing you kind of want to do is learn the card pool of the game you want to deck build for. Obviously, this is going to be specific to Dragon Ball Super, but yeah, so you need to know what cards are out there so that you can choose a type of deck to play. It could be based on your favorite characters. It could be based on the strategy. If you're a little bit more of a veteran card game player and know your play style and what you kind of like to do in the game. And knowing the card pool is really solid as well. I remember one of the first times I started playing this game, I saw a video by Eddie St. Hilaire, and he said knowing the card pool so you're never surprised by a card really helps when you need to counter something or you see an unexpected tech that your opponent's playing. So really good advice there. Now your play style. This kind of comes more from a veteran standpoint. If you haven't really played a TCG before, you're going to kind of have to experiment, but typically there's a few different styles of play. There's aggro, which is really rush beatdown. Very good play style. This format, aggro is very strong with the blue-yellow rush, blue-red rush. Control is more about controlling the board, controlling your opponent's hand, controlling what your opponent is able to do. We see that with things like Broly hand control, Cell hand control, the Veggie engine with Kale popping board, stuff like that. Mid-range, that's where you're dropping kind of big bombs mid to late game. So we have that with the SS3 red blue deck, Kefla mid-range. So that's a kind of a mid-range strategy. You're not going to go all in on your opponent early, but you're going to wear them down and beat them with your big beaters later on. And then tempo kind of falls somewhere in between control and mid-range. You're kind of actively trying to set your opponent back, whether you're doing things like stifling their plays or locking their energy with the Vegeta lock deck, and then trying to whittle them down that kind of way. So different play styles you can do when you're trying to build a deck. You're going to have to kind of figure this out by trying different decks out if you aren't really a veteran TCG player. So keep that in mind as well, how you kind of like to play the game. So next up we have theory crafting, and this is one of the most this is the part of deck building that never ever stops. You're constantly going to be theory crafting. You're constantly going to be thinking, well, how can my deck do this better? How can my deck do this type of different thing that it normally can't do? But so we'll go into this. So how is your deck going to meet your play style? So I have an example here, and these examples are hopefully there to help you guys when you do reference this back when you need to. So aggro, how is your deck going to meet your play style if you want to play an aggro deck? Well, we have blue leaders in this game that are able to reuse a lot of energy via Unyielding Trunks and Senzu Bean. And we have these red battle cards, so you probably make a blue-red variant. So the red battle cards that deal big damage for cheap investments like Sankawa, Intensifying Power Trunks. So you're able to abuse only 1 to 2, 3 energy by untapping all of it, and then these cheap hitters are what allow you to make big hits on your opponent. And on top of that, you have Legendary Flute, which allows you to reuse those cheap attackers and cycle through your deck. So that's kind of a theory of how you want to make a strong aggro deck. These meta decks, they didn't come out of nowhere. They were theory crafted and tested by a lot of the top tier players and content creators. Another example being control. If you want to play a control deck, especially in this format, SS3 leader is really good for that because he allows you to ramp up your control drops faster, like your Bergamos, like your Vegetos, like your combo killer Anti-Lazas. Allows you to get there quicker because he starts you off at 2 energy, gives you free energy on your opponent's turn to control their turn, like with negates and out comboing them, things like that, and quicker access to Awakening just to get more cards. So that's kind of how you can kind of theory craft your play style to certain cards once you know the card pool. So next up is synergy, and this talks about cards that work well together. So we have, for example, like Bardock the Progenitor and Scrambling Assaults on Goten. Other things that are synergistic, like these examples up here, like untapping energy to drop big hitters. So like your Unyielding Trunkses can untap red energies. Your Senzu Bean can untap red energies, so you can drop those red one-drop threats. So that's kind of what synergy means, cards that work well together and work well as a team. Next part of this talks about what is the goal of your deck. This kind of has to do with playstyle and win condition. So, we're going to get into that a little bit more down below, but find out what your playstyle is, find out how your deck wins, and we have a couple listed down below. And then flexibility is also very important, because if you get put into a weird matchup that your deck maybe isn't prepared for, or maybe it's not favorable in your matchup, can your deck do something else that normally it can't really do? Can your control deck get aggressive and start beating something down if you can't let them get to turn 6, let's say, and they just drop an auto win condition? Can your deck do something that it normally doesn't do, and can it do that well enough to win you the game? All right, so now we have a section for win conditions and finishers. So the win condition and finishers kind of talks about how you plan to win the game. So do you want to win via boss monster? Do you enjoy dropping a big beater that has a crazy effect? It has like a kind of a hard way to drop it. Maybe like the 12-drop Jiren, when you have 9 Universe 11s engraved, it becomes a 6-drop. Can't be countered, can't be blocked. Quadruple Strike, I believe it's 40k. And we actually have a video for the best boss monsters of set 4, so definitely check that out if you're interested in building a boss monster type deck. But yeah, so your boss monster will be the focal point of your deck. Your strategy will usually revolve around doing everything you can to drop this card, and it should win you the game. Another example we have is like the Hidden Mastery Son Goku in the Lineage decks. So when you drop this guy, he taps down 3 of your opponent's things, whether it be energy or battle cards. So you can tap down blockers, you can tap down your opponent's energy so they can't negate you. And then he swings for a triple strike dual attack. So when you drop this guy, he should definitely win you the game, and he is definitely the boss monster of the Lineage deck. Do you want to out-resource your opponent? In this kind of win condition, you want to attempt to gain positive card economy, which we will definitely do a video on card economy in the future. And so you want to plus as often as possible while trying to keep your opponent as neg as possible, like low card economy. So decks that do that are kind of like veggies. They just like spam the board, gain mad resources. A lot of your cards draw you cards. A lot of your cards get you other cards. So you just like swarm the board and out-resource your opponent that way. Or do you want to go with an alternate win condition? Currently, I believe the only one in the game right now is the Victory Strike Son Goku. So that was a very meta deck in set 3. It's still like potentially playable now. It might even be more playable once Flute goes to 1. But yeah, so that's like an alternate win condition type of deck. Next, we'll talk about some consistency. So how often can your deck do what it's being built to do? Oftentimes, consistency trumps power. And I have an example of that here. Trunks the Constant Hope. This card is a 6-drop blue battle card that says when you have a Goku and a Vegeta in your graveyard, it gains triple strike. And when you attack with it, you can combo with 3 blue battle cards from your graveyard. The combo with 3 blue battle cards from your graveyard is actually incredibly good. 6 drops a little steep, especially in this format, but it's kind of always been steep. But the real kicker is gaining triple strike, which is like a great finishing keyword to have. But the rough part about that is being able to get that off consistently, because then you have to run Goku and Vegeta cards and that don't really have a lot of synergy or don't really have great synergy with Trunks cards, especially this Trunks card itself. So you're kind of having to run a jumble of a deck in order to get off a win condition that is incredibly powerful but not very, very consistent. So oftentimes consistency will trump power, and you want to make your deck as consistent as possible. What does consistency mean? You want to have a win condition that's a little bit more simple. How can we kind of play with consistency? Well, a couple ways. You want to implement simple yet powerful win conditions. So you want the cards that win you the game, whether it's a boss monster, you want it to be like somewhat simple to drop. Like the 12-drop Jiren, actually, believe it or not, is a little bit more simple to drop, especially when you combine it with Ultimate Box Jiren Leader, who discards Universe 11s every single time he attacks. So that's a little bit more simple to drop. And then you have the cards that draw you cards. So like, for example, Legendary Flute is a great consistency card. 1-drop Majin Buu, great consistency card. 1-drop Bulma that draws you a card, great consistency card. So that's kind of what we mean when we talk about consistency, and ratios is going to play a part into that as well. So we'll talk about some ratios. So like I said before, Richard Zapp's article on Kitchen Table Meta talks really in depth about ratios and actually some like mathematical theories behind it. But here's some like a little bit more simpler rules for ratios. So when I look at a deck that I build, and I actually want to do a deck building video as like kind of a follow up to this in the future. So when I'm building a deck, you know, there's ratios for 4 ofs, 3 ofs, 2 ofs, and 1 ofs. So I'll talk about kind of what I believe ratios should kind of follow. So 4 of, you want to see this card all the time. You want to open it with it all the time. You want to see it as frequently as possible, and you don't mind seeing multiples of the card. So this kind of falls in line with like some of your consistency cards, like Legendary Flute, like Majin Buu. Depending on the deck, like in an aggro deck, you want to see 4 Kneeling Spirit Trunks because it's always a good card at any stage of the game. So cards that are good at any stages of the game, you definitely want at 4. Now we go down to 3 ofs. Now 3 ofs are like pretty much just as good as, like, in terms of what they do for your deck. They're just as good as 4 ofs, but sometimes they're not a starter card or an early game play. So a lot of times, like, your boss monster decks will only play 3 of the boss monsters. So like the Height of Mastery Son Goku lineage boss monster, I really only played 3 of those because it's dead for the first 5 turns. You want to draw into it, and the amount you can draw with lineage via Bardock, via your leader swinging and drawing cards, you know, you're expecting to see it reasonably within that later part of the game, and especially if it's more of a late game play/finisher. So 3 of is totally fine, but at the same time, you don't really want to drop it down to 2 because let's say you have to charge 1 early because it's dead, and you don't want to only rely on having 1 more in your deck that you might not see. 2 ofs, only good in specific situations, searchable, more valuable if your deck has a lot of draw power. So we saw this back in the day with like Mecha Frieza, when Mecha Frieza format was around. A lot of cards would be at 2 because you had so much draw power in the deck. You had Manaka being basically a pot of greed, a draw 2. You had Planet Vegeta being a draw 1, search 1, and you awaken turn 1. So you just had the most incredible amount of draw power. So you could really see whatever you wanted when you wanted to see it. Only being good in specific situations. So a 2 of example would be like in the ARG Philly meta where it was like SS3 mirror matches all day. A lot of people only played 2 Digging Deep Vegeta in the main deck. It's a great card for helping you awaken, but it's only really good against the mirror match. It's not like even relevant in like Harudegar and aggro matchups, things like that. So that's kind of a good example of a 2 of. Then you could side deck more copies of it if you need it. Another good example of a 2 of, oftentimes you'll see Overrealm slots at like 2 ofs, sometimes 3 ofs, but a lot of times 2 ofs, because they can clog if you see them too many, see them too much, and not that many decks can fuel the grave like on command. So a 2 of for an Overrealm slot's a really, really good idea as well. 1 ofs, I don't really find to be super duper viable, even if your deck has a lot of draw power. You're just so unlikely to see it, and then if you life it, depending on what position in your life it is, it's hard to see as well. But I don't think they're really viable unless they're searchable. So if you're playing like a 1 of off of like Successor of Hope, that's easily searchable. I think that's totally fine. If you're playing a 1 of off like Mighty Mask, totally fine. Or if it's acting as a 5th copy of another card in your deck. So if it kind of like does the same exact thing. So let's say like I'm playing 4 Quick Rush Trunks, and this new Pew Pew Magician's Lackey thing is coming out in the World Tournament Booster set. It's basically got the same exact stats as Quick Rush Trunks, same effect, same energy cost. So let's say I want to play a 5th Quick Rush Trunks, I could do that. You know, it's basically a 5th copy of the same exact card in my deck. So that's another reason to play a 1 of. Next up, we have engines. So what an engine is a pool of cards that have synergy and consistency with one another. So we have like Bardock the Progenitor and Scrambling Salts and Goten, which are part of an aggro engine, which are actually searchable by Successor of Hope. So that's like a 3-card engine that's like really, really popular, really, really consistent. Another engine example could be like the Cell Chain. So you have like your 3-drop cell that goes into your 5-drop cell, that goes into your 7-drop cell, and then you have your 18 and 17 pieces that you need for that engine. You know, your engine that you play should fit your play style. If you wanted to play aggro, you'd probably play Bardock and Goten and Successor. If you wanted to play control, you'd probably play, you know, Cell and his pieces, his evolved pieces, things like that. Another step is building to the meta. So you kind of have 2 choices when you get to this point of the deck building process. You can either build a meta deck, so you can look at results of big tournaments, see what's winning, see what's topping, and you can build a deck like that, make your own personal changes to it. Or you can build to the meta, meaning you can build a deck that counters a tier 1 deck if you don't want to play a tier 1 deck. A kind of a popular thing right now to counter aggro strategies is to play a green deck that utilizes full power energy, because blowing up your opponent's 1-drop so they can't flute or swap them is really, really strong. So that's kind of a way to play to the meta. And oftentimes like green is a very control-y color. So if your playstyle kind of falls into the control category, this might be the kind of way for you to go to build a green deck that kind of counters that. Next up is hitting your curve. So what a curve is in this game, it's your energy it's your energy level, like how much energy you have on a given turn and what you can do for that turn. So hitting a curve means having a plan for each turn. For each energy you have, you should have a play plan. So let's say I was playing mono blue SS3. Let's just say my curve was leader effect, charge 2 off my life, 2 blues, play a Majin Buu, flute it back to my hand. That's my curve. That's all I can do for that turn realistically. Turn 2, I'm at 3 energy because of my leader's effect. It got me up a 1 early. And that's my Tapion play. Tapion's my curve on turn 2. I awaken, draw a bunch of cards. Turn 3, I'm at 4 energy. My curve can kind of expand from here. It can go to Bergamo, it can go to Vegito. It can go to a whole lot of different things. So that's kind of what hitting your curve means. You want to decipher your early game plays versus your late game plays. You know, like Majin Buu being like an early game play, 1 energy, draw 1. Late game plays, the Beerus that makes your opponent discard up to 6 worth of energy cost, things like that. Another thing to note is how much of one particular color do you need. So, for example, if you're playing the veggie package, say in Teamwork Kaba, he makes veggies, he makes a deck work, and you need to start off with 2 greens in order to get this off. So, with that being said, you probably want to run 25 green cards just to make sure you can charge 2 that early. You know, it's kind of tough playing like Mecha Veggies post nerf because you didn't want to clog too much on yellow, even though some of the yellow cards are really, really good, like Shugesh, Planet Vegeta, Cold Bloodlust, things like that. You really need to keep a high green count, even though it's a tricolored deck, so that you could really consistently hit your Kaba turn 1. And then next up, we have combo value. A lot of the cards in this game that aren't extra cards have combo values. So like you have your 0 energy 5Ks, you have your 1 energy 10Ks typically. So if you're not playing a deck that can untap energy very well, like especially a Blue Leader or SS3 or like Soul Striker Son Goku, 1 energy 10K bumps can clunk really, really hard. If you can't untap energy easily, you probably want to keep those to like 6 or less. If your deck kind of revolves around big drops that have 10K bumps, you know, you kind of don't really have much of a choice, but if you can help it, you kind of want to keep this to like 8, 6, or less if you can help it. And keep in mind the extra cards do not have high combo value. This is one of like the only downfalls when Mecha Frieza was tier 0, that if they had a handful of extra cards and they couldn't defend, they were dead in the water. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You don't want to clog too much extra cards because they cannot be used to combo. And battling and comboing in this game is like one of the most important things, one of the most important things to consider for deck building. So guys, those are some of the notes that I've gotten down for you guys for deck building. Please let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Definitely check out this this article by Richard Zapp on Kids Table Meta's blog. So definitely check that out. With that being said, my name's Joey. Please let me know what you guys think about this video down in the comments below. If you like videos like this to help you kind of learn how to play the game better and get better at this game that you love, please do consider subscribing and liking this video. So yeah guys, with that being said, my name's Joey, and I'll see you next time.